Everyone is trying to track down the vampire Batman, but is he worth the hunt? Finally, guys. Finally. I have to be careful with what words I use in the opening intros of these videos now, but I finally found Vampire Gold Label Batman Walmart exclusive, because those are the only retailers that are currently carrying this thing around right now, and I had to visit quite a handful of them before finally one managed to carry it, and they likely had it in the back because the only way I was able to get it is through store pickup. But my search has finally ended after coming across them for the first time, technically speaking, last year. It was December 29th, I believe. Sadly, I had to leave it due to some financial circumstances, but it's back again, and now we're finally able to review him in the brand new Lightbox setup here. So let's see how things kind of go down with this new kind of endeavor. But as you can see, we're taking a look at the Gold Label Walmart exclusive Vampire Batman. However, what I do find curious is that Vampire Batman is probably going to get a conversation started amongst McFarlane toy collectors, because he's technically speaking not a brand new figure. He is a repaint. He is a reuse of the Hush Batman mold that was released last year as both a separate variant as well as the open mouth, very angry looking version that came inside of the Hush Batman and Hush 2-pack. And it looks like McFarlane is kind of doubling down on that mold, not only for Vampire Batman here, but also for that upcoming blue and gray variant that's going to be part of a new wave hitting stores very, very soon. So it's interesting that he is reutilizing what was, again, one of the more talked about molds, and he's doing it again here with Vampire Batman, albeit with a much more muted down color scheme that frankly I am a fan of. I do like the more gothic nature. I have a tendency to gravitate towards gothic looking overtones as far as color scheming and paint decals and design work for certain things, and of course what better character to do this with than with Batman. And you can see right here that he's got a bit more of an copper-like kind of brown where the gray should be, but an awful lot of the black still remains, albeit it's more of a jet black amongst the underwear, the bat symbol, and of course the cowl, gauntlets, and boots. And overall, it has a very pristine paint applications to it, albeit mine came with a couple of little scuffs and mishaps here and there. There's these little glistening portions that you can find along the area of the thigh and the arm that I'm not a huge fan of. If anybody in the comment section has any kind of advice as to how to get rid of some of these things, I would gladly appreciate it. But pulling him out of the box, I'm a little surprised with the quality of the plastic. It actually feels pretty good in hand, very sturdy. And some of my favorite details do come across the Vampire Batman aesthetic, specifically the blood on the mouth and the overall texturing and detail going alongside the mouth and the eyes. I think it's probably one of the standouts here, because even though this is technically a repaint of a previously used mold, they did in fact slightly resculpt the head to give him the teeth and the fangs and the overall very macabre look of the eyes painted in red, the blood pouring from his mouth, which is really well smeared. It actually looks like legit blood on his mouth, because not only is it smeared and kind of thinned out a little bit to make it look like it's drenching, or rather dripping from his mouth, but they gave it a slightly darker red to make it look a little bit more dried out, like he's been having this blood and he's just so savage now that he's not going to bother wiping it away anytime soon. But also the little detail inside of the fangs and how worn out and kind of decayed his skin and those teeth really are. They actually nailed it out of the park. And one of my other little details that I like is the little gash on his cowl that you can see a little bit of blood seeping through. It's honestly one of the better uses of the head sculpt here. Frankly though, when we get to the hands, they decided to give him some additional details of a backstory here of him either hunting down other vampires or rather, hunting down humans himself, since he's been turned into a vampire, unlike the comic series. And I appreciate the little nuance, but I think I don't know if it's maybe because of the color utilized for the gauntlet is kind of seeping through, but the blood on his hands doesn't exactly look as great as it does on the mouth. It looks a little too muddy, a little too brownish, so I think that could have been lightened up a little bit just to kind of make it stand out a little bit more, make it look a little bit more gruesome. Aside from that though, I'm overall digging the horror-like aesthetic. However, it's not enough to kind of detract from the little nuances and factors that make me actually kind of understand why some people weren't a fan of this mold back when it was released as part of that Hush wave. You may have noticed that this entire time I've been kind of holding him with both of my hands, and aside from my hands, you also have the circular base here pegged underneath one of his feet. That's because this guy is frankly atrocious to stand on his own. Every time that I try to get him to stand via just the 2 feet, it's always been a problem, whether it be me just playing with the figure or trying to get him set up for this review. He would always topple from one side to another, and another contributing factor to that would have to be the winded cape back there, that despite being made of a very durable quality of rubber plastic, it's also very, very top heavy. It's actually one of the more top heavy capes I've ever had to have experience with, and because of that, it's doing a disservice to the figure in getting him to stand up on his own, whether it be having this little part that's kind of creasing and blowing in the wind being put behind the leg or over the leg. I've tried both methods, and either way it would always manage to find a way to topple him, which is a shame because when it comes to clothing, I think that they did a good job of getting the little creases and the little wrinkles around the abdominal and underwear area done really effectively. I just think that if only they could have put just a little bit of levity amongst the cape, we probably would have had less top-heavy issues. But it might extend beyond that, because as I toyed with him a little bit more, there's something about the way his legs are sculpted that almost feel like one of the legs is shorter than the other. It's very difficult to articulate here on camera, but as I play with them I stretched out the joints and the legs and make sure everything is proportioned right, I would always feel like this leg came up just a little too long than this one, even if it's by the fraction of a millimeter, and thus prompted me to bring out this base and peg it underneath to get him to kind of make up for that dividend and get him to stand properly. And that's a huge demerit with the figure, especially when it comes to posing and articulation. Now, if you already own that previously released Hush version of this Batman, then you probably already know what the gist is as far as articulation is concerned, but we're going to go ahead and cover it really quick here. One of the big talking points about that version was in fact the head joint, because as you can see, the actual joint is at the base of the neck and not at the top of the neck or base of the head. So you don't necessarily have a separate head. It's almost like an entire head and neck piece joined together, and it's very reminiscent of the Three Jokers Batman, which with that mold I liked. Here, I'm a little indifferent. It's not necessarily in the best positive light, but it's also not in the most negative either. You can kind of rotate the head 360 degrees, but as you do, you can see a little bit of bulging going alongside the piece here of the neck, so it just looks a little bit awkward when you kind of slice it in different ways. As far as tilting up and down, of course, it's a little bit more generous than your typical figure because of the way that that neckline is designed. As you can see, it scrunches down towards the bottom, much more favorable than it does actually looking up. Looking up could have been just a little bit better. The arms are able to fully rotate 360 degrees vertically, and that is of course thanks to the way that this is sculpted, which once again, I'm personally kind of indifferent, but I can completely understand if folks hated, not even disliked, but hated the way that this is all sculpted because I can see it. It doesn't really bother me as much, but I totally understand if the way that this is all kind of cut and edged out and knifed down just looks ugly to them. I understand. And it's probably a little easier to swallow with the muted color scheme. It just kind of blends a little bit together. I would probably say that once I do get that blue and gray variant that is set to release soon, it might stand out a little bit more as ugly because I can see the vibe of how all of this right here could have been blended just a little bit better. But thankfully, again, like I mentioned just now, it favors the articulation not only in the rotation, but also in the extension of both arms. They're very free-flowy, and at the same time, you get an awful lot of movement towards the top parts of the shoulders, and you do have that little middle piece in there to kind of hide a little bit of shrugging motion, although the shrugging, considering the way that those shoulders are molded, could have been a little on the better side. So that's the only real qualm that I have. You do, however, have pretty girthy but substantial bicep swivels going on alongside right there on both arms, as well as the two joints at the elbows that are fully able to bend all the way up, and wrist joints that are fully able to rotate the hand as well as vertically slide up and down. They are, however, the typical ball joints. Could have used a little bit of that much more improved version, but considering that this is a reutilized earlier mold, I can see why they might have bypassed that and forgotten all about that. So hopefully moving forward, brand new figures will have those new joints that I really like. Then on over to the torso, you are able to fully rotate 360 degrees, provided that you are able to manage with the cape as well as a little bit of the bulging going alongside this molded piece right here, as long as it doesn't look terribly awkward. Sadly, not a lot of crunching. I noticed that there's a good amount of extension towards the back, but then you're open to this hollow piece right here, as well as not a lot of crunching towards the front or even to the sides, and no form of waist articulation found right there. So they could have kind of improved that just a little bit more from the previous mold. Legs are fully able to extend about that far forward due to the underwear piece, but also extend towards the back like that. And then proper extension towards the sides very generously via ratcheted joints right there. And as you do so, I just want to throw a quick shout out to, again, the little bit of details that they're able to throw into the clothing. You can see some of the wrinkling going alongside the thigh parts of the suit that are actually baked in there. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. I just wish I could have gotten rid of, again, that little splotchy part right there on my thigh. That is a huge bummer. Wish my figure didn't come with that. But considering how rare these things are going for right now in the market, I'll take what I can get. Moving on down, you do get, however, the two joints at the knees that are fully ratcheted this time around. So that's pretty cool. And you are able to bend them almost all the way up. Though do be careful because mine were a little bit on the stiff side, but at least they are firm. And as you move down the glistening boots, you do get ankle joints that, again, are just the typical ball joints. They don't really have the brand new improved joints, but again, this is a reuse of the mold, so they're gonna come with that. Nevertheless, they are ratcheted and very, very sturdy when pivoting the feet downwards as well as upwards and getting them to rotate all the way around 360 degrees. And of course, the toesies, very fluid and very movable right there. So it's got all the makings of great posability. There's just something off about the way that these legs are sculpted. And it's one thing to maybe have the arms sculpted in a way that doesn't feel symmetrical, but the legs are an entire beast altogether that can make or break a good amount of the posing here. And because of that, I had to call upon the base to get things to stand firmly. Otherwise, if I try to do it on my own here, let me just give you guys a little quick glimpse as to what I was dealing with. You can see right there that unless I get him to do a full-blown splits such as that, then maybe we can get him standing on his own without the need of the base. And even then, he is super delicate to, have any kind of movement or anything kind of moving about him, especially when it comes to posing him with his one and only accessory, which is going to be this Vampire Hunter axe, which, again, it's pretty curious that they decided to make him a vampire himself, unlike in the comic series that he's based on, but at least they threw in the cool axe along with it. Mine was a little warped coming out of the box, as you can see a bit right here in the middle of the stem, but at least it's beautifully decorated and painted in the chrome silver, along with the bat symbol there in the middle, as well as the little details and carvings and kind of chippings of the axe right here on both sides, as well as the chrome paint still coming through right there. So it's a nice little additional piece. And of course, there's only really one hand to put it in, which is going to be this holding hand on his right. And overall, as you can see, he is definitely a talking point of a figure, and he looks great up on the shelf as so. But we must also keep in mind that he is technically the first major release, along with Eradicator, who's also a gold label Walmart exclusive, the first major release of the brand new year, kind of giving us a taste of what's to come as we enter this brand new wave that's also going to include this mold along with a brand new Catwoman, brand new Joker. And I'd say that this is probably the McFarlane Toys figure equivalent of upgrading your iPhone, where sometimes you just don't need to. I don't think that this is a worthy enough figure to be hunting him down across various Walmarts, simply because he is a gold label and he's got the horror aesthetic going all along the fangs and the blood that are really well detailed. But if you already have yourself that Hush Batman, you can pretty much do without this guy unless, again, you're a completist, you're going after the gold labels, you're making sure that everything is accounted for. And I would say that you're probably better off waiting for that blue and gray variant. That's pretty much going to be released across all retailers, and there's no exclusivity deals found there, as well as being able to be found for pre-order here and there when he's not sold out. So therefore, you are giving some leniency with that. Still, I'm pretty satisfied with the inclusion of Vampire Batman here because, again, I'm a bit of a horror guy. I like vampires. Batman, it kind of makes sense for him to be a vampire considering that he wasn't in the comics, but here in McFarlane Toys form, they at least nailed some of the things to make that aesthetic really work, even if the mold is probably one that after this blue and gray variant and this gold label exclusive should probably be retired or at the very least improved. And therefore, I'm going to be giving the gold label Vampire Batman variant a 7 out of 10. Now let me know in the comments, are you guys having any luck hunting down Vampire Batman? Is he worth the search for you guys, or do you think you're going to skip him and wait for the brand new wave that's set to release here in the spring, along with plenty of other things that are coming down the pipeline for McFarlane Toys? What is your guys' most anticipated McFarlane Toys figure for 2023? I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say in the comment section, and if you guys want to watch another McFarlane Toys review, check out the one showing up on screen right now that YouTube is now recommending for you. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching and stay humble. See you later.